So we continue now looking at interpersonal dynamics and aspects of interpersonal dynamics. And at the moment, we're considering ego states. So what are ego states? Well, have you ever experienced times in your life when you felt very young, very anxious? And maybe there are other times when you feel very competent and very rational and in control of your own process. And other times when you realize perhaps you're acting like one of your parents. Now, we can be in different states, in different situations, with different people. And each of those different states that we go in and out of are referred to as ego states, because as human beings, we're not always very consistent. So ego states, the whole concept was created by Eric Berne. He created the model of psychological model transactional analysis. So he talks about these kind of consistent patterns of feeling, thinking, and behaving that we all possess. So it's usually depicted as three circles like this, PAC. So the P, so if this is your average couple, each person, all of us, we've got three ego states that we go in and out of without being particularly aware of it on any given day. So it's parent, adult, and child. So so this parent, adult, and child is not about actual parents, adults, and children, but it's about different ways of experiencing your world as you go about from day to day. So the parent ego state, when we're in a parent ego state, we can be being authoritarian, controlling, or we can be nurturing. So if you think about the dominant adults in your life when you were growing up, so your actual parents or caregivers, whoever stood in for parents if you didn't have parents, and maybe your teachers or grandparents or any significant adults who had input into your care growing up, your parent ego state will be an amalgam of those people. So whether they were very controlling and strict and authoritarian, or they were nurturing. And so that's the parent. And I'm going to go into these individually now. I can come back to this diagram, but you can see how they're depicted. Parent, when one of a couple is in parent ego state, they can trigger the child in the other. And equally, I haven't depicted it here, someone who's in a child ego state can evoke the parent ego state in another. And these dynamics tend to go on between couples, and often couples will get stuck in one being particularly parental and the other getting triggered into being a child. When someone's in a child ego state, they sometimes feel hurt, wounded, or they're adapted. If they were the kind of child who were very conformist, they did what was expected of them, they were good boys or good girls, and they conformed and kept themselves from getting into trouble or disapproval from their parents. And or sometimes they might have been a rebel and just these are the sort of young people who leave home. They might not be very angry rebels, but it's a way of showing rebellion. And free child is what couples show to each other a lot when they first meet. They often go into being their free child, so they're fun-loving, not taking everything too seriously. They're spontaneous and yes, and expressive with each other. So let's look a bit further at that. So here we've got ways that people can present in different ego states. Sorry about that, my mouse is very, very sensitive. This father here, we'll say, but look, this is not just with couples. We go in and out of these ego states in our workplace with our colleagues, and even, you know, in social situations, we still go in and out of these three ego states, and often people get a bit attached to one in particular. If you think about all your friends and acquaintances, and if you and your partner have a chat between you, you'll be able to identify who is mostly in a controlling parent or authoritarian parent or nurturing and supportive parent. So you can tell by the body language. So the controlling parent will often have a stern look, arms folded, you know, rigid demeanor, not relaxed and smiling. They may be a bit, yeah, they show disapproval in their body language and their facial expression, and they may not even know that they're doing it. They often are not doing it intentionally, but it can be a habitual way of operating and being, and they don't understand why they get the response or reaction, rather, the reaction from people that they do. And actually the person on the receiving end, or who they're interacting with, that person doesn't know why they feel tense either. Not necessarily consciously. They don't look and think, oh, well, it's the look on your face and it's the way you've got your arms folded. But actually just these things are non-verbal communications. So I'm flagging this up to you now to be aware of these in all of your situations. If you're not getting the kind of response from people that you would like to be getting, you might want to check out your facial expression, your body language, and your tone of voice. Because that can be an imperious tone of voice. By contrast, the nurturing and supportive parent, I think in this bottom right image is more of a grandparent perhaps, but if you were fortunate enough to have a warm, affectionate, kind, caring grandparent who interacted with you, because you'll see, look, there's hugs, there's touching going on here, and we, you know, as an adult, you can finish up not being touchy feeling, not being tactile, and saying, oh, well, that's just the way I am. The fact is, we all need human touch. It has a physiological effect. When we're hugged and touched, we produce endorphins, our body's natural painkillers. They make us feel good. And when we're not being touched, we feel physiologically deprived. So actually, we will tend to carry on the patterns that we were used to as a child. The bottom right, the nurturing grandparent, a couple is also very fortunate if they have parents who are nurturing grandparents to their children. If they're not nurturing grandparents to their children, chances are they weren't nurturing parents. So I'm not saying this to bash parents. I'm just saying these things make a difference in your interaction with people and your interpersonal communication, whether in your relationship or in a workplace or social circle. And you'll see in the bottom left here, we have a father who's actually engaging with his child, teaching him how to how to do things, teaching him how to develop skills that help give him a sense of uh, personal efficacy, that sense of accomplishment, that he can do things. That's one of the ways that we build up confidence in our children, is to teach them things hands-on. You know, whether it's baking cakes in the kitchen and allowing them to make a mess, um, or teaching them how to do DIY or make things. So a nurturing and supportive parent stance, taking that ego state and being in that kind of place with each other, is really, really, it's really good ego state to be in. So I would encourage you to develop your nurturing parent to the nth degree. Adult ego state is, here we are, you know, competent adults, being totally appropriate in any given situation. If someone is rude or angry with them, they don't fly into being an angry, controlling parent. They're able to stay calm, be detached, and deal with situations as they arise. Now, a lot of people are in their adult state most of the time when they're in a work situation. They can behave appropriately, competently, rationally. This is very much mostly in your head, but actually a good person in the workplace, it's nice if they can bring a little bit of a nurturer into things with them. In other words, just being kind. I see these two have got their arms folded, which can be a bit intimidating, but they've got nice big smiles. And so the smile does it, a soft tone of voice does it, eye contact is really makes a difference to connect with the person that you're with, to be present with them, to look at them. We all know what it's like sometimes if you go to see the doctor and the doctor's just not even looking at you, they're looking at their computer and your file, and you don't feel connected with. So when you're an adult, and particularly you know, competent adult, depending on what your role is, you will bring other added aspects into the adult role. So then looking at child. Now, if you had the sort of parenting, like here on the top left, where you had a very strict parent who had quite strict, harsh sometimes demands of you, you can very easily finish up being a rebel. But you know, you can be a rebel in a quiet way, but you dig your heels in, and I'm not doing that, because you got used to that was the only way you could defend yourself. So this is not a total generalization. It's not the case always, but rebels will tend to form from maybe parents who were a bit over strict. So at the bottom here, you get a couple who are having an argument, and they can get into, you know, being critical, contemptuous. I'm not going to be the one to speak first. They may even get into stonewalling. And part of this is they're not necessarily meaning to be nasty. It's a way that they have developed. It's a defense that helped them to survive a harsh childhood, perhaps. And also they may have had parents who never taught them how to build bridges. They never learned how to reconcile in a gracious kind of a way. So so that's one of the aspects of being in child ego state. Another child ego state is feeling hurt and wounded. What I was going to say, often with all couples, it happens that we're triggered into childhood states by each other. It's not deliberate or intentional. It just happens that we can finish up feeling in ways that we did when we were young. This child here in the middle, it's kind of feeling quite bereft, lost, lonely, don't know what to do, and totally disapproved of, ashamed, and despairing and hopeless. And we can get triggered into those states as adults. And really, that's when we need our partner, to be in a very nurturing parent ego state to respond, rather than a controlling or authoritarian ego state. So you can see the fit here. And free child, the one on the top right here, if you were fortunate enough to have parents who were warm, affectionate, expressive, and caring with each other, and who didn't mind showing it, and who engaged with you, you always knew they were on your side. They taught you how to soothe yourself as opposed to wind yourself up. That they were able to reassure you that you were still loved, that maybe they disapproved of your behavior, but they didn't ever disapprove of you. And they would help you to understand why some of your behaviors weren't okay. And they would speak to you kindly and gently and give you some guidance and maybe even some instruction for how to do things in a different way. So if you were fortunate enough to have that kind of parenting, then you're one of the few, I think, where you have a very happy, carefree little child like this little girl here, who's full of glee and expects that the world's a great place and she's going to have fun. And she can have fun. She can really let go and enjoy herself. So you get that in the bottom right here, this couple, they're having a pillow fight. Now, most couples, I would say most couples, are able to be in their free child when they first get together. They're able to drop their defenses a bit and relax and just be a bit playful with each other. We can lose that as time goes on. So one of the things that all of you who are listening to this, you need to be able to tap into your free child again. Just getting on with life, often most people, I would say, lose the dropping into their free child because life gets busy and stressy, and there's difficulties and challenges, and we don't often have a chance to let our free child out. I'm asking you to seriously create situations where you can let your free child have free rein. Usually on holiday or around a swimming pool or even having a little dance in the kitchen, you have to tap back into whatever was the best way that you expressed your free child. So just make a note now. What are the times and situations in your marriage when you go into parent or child ego states? So it is well worth taking time to write these in your journal and have conversations with your partner, but identify your own first. And then you can have a conversation with your partner and ask your partner, are there any other times that your partner knows of? And help your partner to identify when he or she goes into their parent or child ego states. So the main thing here, it is not about judgment, who's right or who's wrong, who's good or bad. Just leave that totally aside and have a getting to know us conversation where you're making unconscious patterns of behavior conscious, without judgment. It's important when you're talking to each other not to attach a judgment to it. You can just give each other good, honest, kind, helpful feedback. So just identify which of you is most often in parent, and you don't necessarily have to get into the whys and wherefores of why that is. It's sometimes helpful if you do understand where you got that from, but it doesn't really matter. The issue is identifying which of you is most often in parent, because the one who's most often in parent probably evokes the child in the other, in the partner. And the partner, I'm going to look at who's most often in child. So there's a fit there. And what tends to happen is people get caught in somebody is, if you like, dominant and the other one's in child, but often the child evokes parent in the other one. The idea, so do make a note of who's often in child, and probably you'll find that you switch from time to time. One might be uh, in, well, the two of you might be in parent and child as far as running the household's concerned, but maybe as far as organizing the social life, that switches. And in different areas of your lives, you each go into parent and child. Actually, the ideal is for you to be, sorry about this, folks.